People in the valley stopped laughing at Shen after the flood, not because they finally understood him, but because the river had embarrassed them first. They rebuilt their homes, they patched their roofs, they planted again, and for a while the valley looked peaceful. Until summer came. Not a gentle summer, a summer that felt like a long-held breath. The hills turned the color of old ash, the bamboo dried and cracked. Even the river, Shen's old teacher, ran thinner, quieter, like it was saving itself. Every evening the sun dropped behind the mountains like a red coin sinking into black water, and the wind began to feel wrong. It didn't cool the skin, it scraped it. Shen still sat by the riverbank each morning. Wei sat with him sometimes now. Wei was older, calmer, and still ambitious, just less noisy about it. He had learned something from the flood. Not wisdom, but respect. One afternoon, a boy came running from the cedar grove above the village. His face was pale. His words came out broken. "Smoke in the north ridge." But before they saw it, they heard it, a low vibration in the ground. Not thunder, something hungry eating the air. The villagers climbed a hill, and when they finally saw the ridge, they went silent, because the smoke wasn't a column, it was a wall, a dark band crawling across the sky, stripping the color out of it. And beneath the smoke, a thin orange line moved through the trees like a blade. The village leader, Han, did what leaders always do when they're afraid. He shouted. "Buckets," he ordered. "Bring water. Beat the flames with wet cloth. Everyone to the ridge." Men grabbed pails. Women tore cloth into strips. Children were sent to the wells. Wei ran with them instinctively. And he looked back. Shen was still standing at the riverbank, doing nothing. Wei's stomach tightened. Not again. He ran back to Shen and hissed, "Uncle, this isn't water. This is fire. We have to move." Shen didn't answer immediately. He watched the wind. He watched how the reeds bent, not that they bent, which way. Then he asked quietly, "Where is the wind going?" Wei blinked. "What?" Shen pointed with 2 fingers, not at the flames, but at the air. "The fire is not the enemy. The wind is the horse it rides." Up on the ridge, men began throwing buckets of water at the edge of the flames. It looked heroic, but also looked useless. The water hissed and vanished. The cloth beat the flames, and the flames simply stepped around the cloth. Then the wind surged once, and the fire leapt. A whole crown of cedar ignited like oil. The men stumbled back, faces lit in terror. Someone yelled, "It's moving faster." Han believed lines were real. Fire does not. Wei watched the ridge glow brighter. He felt something cold in his throat. The village was below. If the ridge fell, the roofs would catch. If the roofs caught, the valley would become a bowl of smoke. Wei turned to Shen. "What do we do?"
Shen finally moved. Not fast, not dramatic, just certain. He walked along the river path toward the old terraced field, a wide, dry patch of earth between the grove and the village. It had been abandoned after the last flood. Nothing grew there now but dead grass and thorn. Shen stopped and looked at the terrace like it was a map. Then he said something that made Wei's blood stop. "Burn it." Wei's mouth opened. "Are you insane?" Shen's eyes stayed calm. "If you fear fire," he said, "don't feed it a feast." Han heard the word and turned, furious. "Old man," he shouted, "you want to burn our land while we are trying to save it?" Others joined in. "He's lost his mind. He did nothing in the flood. Now he wants to light a new disaster." Shen didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He didn't try to convince the crowd. He looked at the men's hands. They were shaking. Their arms were already tired from swinging cloth. Their throats were dry from breathing smoke. And Shen said, "If you keep fighting the fire's face, you will lose your body before you lose the fire." Han stepped forward, eyes wild. "So you'll just sit and watch us die?" Shen finally looked directly at him. "No," he said, "I will stop you from dying wrong." Then Shen turned to Wei. "Come." Wei hesitated. This was the hardest moment, not because the plan was complex, but because it was counterintuitive. It asked you to do the one thing your fear cannot accept, make peace with a smaller loss to prevent a larger one. Wei swallowed and followed Shen. They grabbed a few men who were still thinking instead of shouting. They went to the abandoned terrace. Shen had them clear line, quick, ruthless, pull dead grass, kick thorn aside, scrape dirt bare. A firebreak, not wide enough to impress anyone, just wide enough to matter. The villagers screamed anyway, "You're wasting time!" Shen ignored them. He knelt at the edge of the terrace and picked up a handful of dry grass. He let it fall. The wind stole it instantly, straight toward the village. Shen's jaw tightened slightly. Not fear, calculation. He waited a long minute. Smoke thickened. The ridge roared. Then, like a tired lung exhaling, the wind shifted just a little. Not toward the village, sideways toward the river bend. Shen stood. "Now," he said. Wei's hands trembled as he struck flint. A spark caught on the dry grass at the terrace edge. A thin flame rose. It didn't explode, it didn't roar. It crept, and that was the point. Han panicked. He didn't just shout, he lunged. He raised a boot to stomp the small flame out. Wei shoved him back, hard. Han stumbled in the dirt, shocked. Wei's voice came out like stone. "Don't." Han stared at him like he didn't recognize him. Up on the ridge, the main wildfire surged down the slope. It was unstoppable. It was a moving hunger. The air turned orange. The heat reached the valley like a hand on the face. The villagers backed away, praying.
And then the two fires met. For one terrifying second, people thought the world would end. But something else happened. The main wildfire reached the terrace and found nothing to eat. The grass was already gone. The brush was already ash. The fire hesitated, like a beast arriving at an empty table. Then it did what fire always does when it cannot feed. It weakened. It lowered. It crawled along the dead edge, searching, and then it slid sideways, following the wind toward the river bend. Not defeated, redirected. The village roofs did not ignite. The grove did not become a torch. The valley did not become a furnace. By dusk, the ridge still smoked, but the worst had passed. Men sat down in the dirt, shaking, not from effort, but from the shock of survival. Han stood staring at the blackened terrace. His pride looked broken. He finally asked, hoarsely, "What did you do?" Shen brushed ash from his sleeve. "I stopped feeding it," he said. Han's voice cracked. "You burned our land." Shen nodded once. "And saved your home." Then Shen looked toward the ridge, and he said the line that cut through everything. "You cannot kill a monster by hitting it. You kill a monster by starving it." Han had no answer. Wei stared at the terrace. He realized something that chilled him. Most people think strength means pushing harder. But Shen's strength was different. Shen could tolerate the feeling of not looking heroic. He could tolerate being misunderstood. He could tolerate sacrificing one thing without becoming emotional about it. That night, Wei found Shen again by the river. The smoke had thinned. The moon was faint behind haze. Ash drifted on the water like black petals. Wei asked quietly, "So doing nothing was burning the field?" Shen didn't smile. He said, "Doing nothing is not refusing to act. It is refusing to act blindly." Wei nodded slowly. Then Shen added, "Most people don't lose because they're weak. They lose because they spend their strength on the wrong fight. Wei remembered the men throwing buckets at a living wall of heat. Heroic, futile, he remembered the small fire creeping quietly, doing exactly what it was meant to do. And he understood the twist. The calm move wasn't passive, it was precise. And that is what the old books call Wu Wei. Not laziness, not surrender, but action that matches reality so closely, it looks like the world itself is cooperating. So, if you're facing something right now that feels unstoppable, a deadline, a conflict, a habit, a fear, ask yourself one question before you push harder. Am I fighting the fire's face, or am I starving its fuel? Because sometimes the wisest move is not a louder effort. It is a smaller, cleaner action, placed in the right direction at the right moment, with no ego attached. That is the man who did nothing, and that is why he keeps winning.